We shall move along. We are now going to, as I said at the start, we've got another overview topic here, which is a bit of a luxury, which is great, I think, to really level set the room to know what we're talking about here. We've got a lot of different people. This is really, what is the Internet of Things? Where are we? How have we got here today? We're very lucky that we have someone who's flown in this morning, Red Eye from Philadelphia. Whether it's Red Eye because of the recent Philadelphia Eagles win, I don't know, but it's certainly Red Eye. So welcome up on stage, please, the CEO of Microshare, Ron Rock.
Thank you. And great, so my name's Ron Rock. I'm the CEO of Microshare, based out of Philadelphia. But before I get to this internet thing, fly, Eagles, fly on the road to victory. Now, I couldn't sing the whole song, but we won the Super Bowl. We've waited 50 years. 50 years. We've never won a Super Bowl before. There's a parade tomorrow in Philadelphia. They're expecting 2 million people to show up at this parade. So I don't know if I left at the wrong time or the right time. But Philadelphia also, we're known for cheesesteaks. And cheesesteaks, there's two primary cheesesteak places in Philadelphia. One is Pat's and one is Geno's. If you go to one, you would never be caught dead going to another. And people are passionate about this. So one time I'm late for a flight in Terminal 5, get up to the front desk, I'm out of breath, and I hand her the woman my ticket, and without skipping a beat, she says, Pat's or Geno's? I said, Geno's. She said, okay, you're on. So anyway, Philadelphia, flew in from Philly this morning. Happy to be here, so thank you for the invite, and excited to talk to you guys today about what I think is a really exciting space. So data is everywhere. It's just becoming more and more a part of our lives, and there's a term that you hear that data is eating every industry, and data is becoming more and more the physical world. You know, many of you have heard of a company called WeWork. WeWork didn't exist 10 years ago. They have a market cap of over $18 billion. And WeWork, what they do is they go into cities like Bristol, like London, like New York, and they take the best office space and they lease it out then to small companies, but also large companies like IBM or Comcast. In Philadelphia, we belong to a building that's owned by Brandywine Realty Trust. Brandywine's been around for 30 years. They have a market cap of $3 billion. They own all these skyscrapers. They take the risk of building them, insuring them, keeping them maintained, leasing them. Now WeWork comes in. I give WeWork $1 of rent, and WeWork turns that dollar into $8 of market cap. They then turn around and give that same dollar back to Brandywine, and Brandywine turns it into 60 cents of market cap. So who's got all the risk and who's got all the value creation? And that's all because of this data-centric world that we see, and data is eating everything. So it's easy to see as we now know what's happening in the industry. Look at 2006, who the top largest companies in the world were. None of them show up. None of them show up in 2016. Every one of these companies in 2016 is a digital company with data. And if you think about it even more, Mercedes, one of the best car manufacturers in the world, they used to understand exactly who their competition was. It's BMW, it's General Motors. These slides are moving on their own, I apologize. But no, today, it's companies like Uber and Google. So if you aren't fundamentally changing the way you think about your business, you risk becoming obsolete. So just one more data point on this, 52% of the Fortune 500 companies don't exist anymore because of this innovation. So what's going on? Well, it started out with Wi-Fi. All of us have devices connected to our home. We all have devices connected via our phones. And there's all kinds of wireless. Wireless is what's bringing this whole thing to life. And so with Wi-Fi, there's only so far that we can take our devices, and they consume a lot of power. All of us are also used to walking around with these things. These are fantastic. They're $700 a piece, though. So the device is expensive. They also suck up battery life, as we all know. and they have to be plugged in all the time. But the network that talks to these phones is also incredibly expensive. You see in cities like London, New York, where they're putting up billboards now, kiosks on the corners, and they're really hiding mobile hotspots. And they're doing this because we can't flood cities like London and New York with enough bandwidth for all of us to be consuming our HD quality video. So we've got 4G, we've got 5G coming out. Then as you come on down the spectrum, we've got 3G. Anybody that has a car with a SIM chip in it, that's what your car is communicating. And every time we come down this spectrum, you consume a little bit less battery, and the network is a little bit less expensive to put in place. But if you come all the way down to low power wide area networks, or one of the fastest evolving IoT networks in the world now, LoRa, a single antenna will give me 9 kilometers of coverage. And suddenly, I've got a device that's going to be sub $10 with a 10-year battery life. So now, rather than $700, and oh, by the way, $100 a month to talk to the network and expensive infrastructure, I've got cheap infrastructure, I've got cheap sensors, and oh, by the way, these sensors are going to talk to the network for maybe 15 cents a year. Well, suddenly, when I can do that, I'm going to put sensors on everything. We talk about sensors on every dog, cat, kid, manhole cover, snowplow, soap dispenser, toilet seat, refrigerator door. Everything's going to have a sensor on it. Now, all that data still needs to be locked down and encrypted. It's all a great target for cyber terrorism. But at the same time, which they could easily disrupt our lives. But at the same time now, this is the explosion that's going to happen. But to the comment that our host made this morning, when we talk to consumers, they still don't see it. People talk about 20 billion sensors by 2020. I've been fortunate enough to spend time with some of the biggest chip manufacturers in the world. If this compound that we're in right now, you could imagine 1 million sensors in this compound, between the aquarium and the parking garages and this whole little ecosystem. If you wanted to put 1 million sensors onto this compound right now, nobody can fill that order. The lead time would probably be 9 to 18 months to make that a reality. It's not because the design isn't there. It isn't because the desire isn't there. It's because the chips aren't there. So right now, billions of dollars are being spent building these chip factories. So it is inevitable that it's coming, but it's not here now. And so you get a lot of people saying, well, Jesus, IoT, is this just another fad? All the infrastructure is going in place. You see companies like Vodafone, British Telecom, AT&T, Verizon, IBM, Microsoft investing billions of dollars in the infrastructure and the platform because it's going to come, but it's not here yet. So once these sensors and these chips become available and that price drops, I like to say some holiday season, it's probably not 2018, but maybe 2019, every one of us around the holidays, we're going to get a gift from mom, dad, or the kids that's around 50 pounds, and it's going to talk to the network. Might be a golf ball, a keychain, a collar for the cat, but suddenly that's where you're going to see these billions of devices flood the market, dirt cheap, and now we've got great opportunities, but a lot of significant challenges. So obviously, a big focus of today is security. Again, something as benign as soap dispensers and toilet seats can be very life-disrupting if somebody's hacking into them. And it's also a great way to create diversion for some other nefarious activity. We all remember last year where people hacked through closed-circuit TV cameras and managed to build upstream and actually break into the cloud, into the network. But there's also lots of regulatory issues involved as well. This whole idea of who owns the data. Where's the data stored? Data sovereignty. France is very specific. If you are a BNP Paribas customer, that data cannot leave the boundaries of France. But I happen to be over here in the UK right now. Or maybe I've got an account at HSBC and at BNP, and I want to see data flow back and forth. How do I do that? So regulatory issues, whether it be healthcare, financial services, governments, intellectual property of competitive industries. So all of this stuff is going to create some big challenges. But then there's also moral questions. There was a lot of fuss made a few months ago when an executive of Mercedes said, we will always put the safety of our drivers first with autonomous cars. Seems like a reasonable thing to say. So your autonomous driving Mercedes is flying down the road and the computer decides it's inevitable, there's going to be an accident. And if I go straight, I'm going to hit a school bus, and the computer figures this out, probably going to kill 6 or 7 kids. If I go to the left, I'll hit that pole, and I'm going to kill the driver. This is a real scenario. This is a real question. The car's going to do exactly what the code tells it to do. The code's going to process the data that it has right there at that moment. What's the answer? These become really difficult things to figure out. But this is the world we're entering into when data centricity becomes part of our everyday lives and in every aspect. So, who owns all this data? Let's start with a credit card. You know, people say, gee, IoT, this is going to be really challenging. Well, we've been living in this multi-party ownership scenario already for most of our lives. Every time you swipe a credit card, who owns that data? Well, it's certainly yours. You were shopping at that store. It's also the merchants. That's fair. But it's your banks. Your bank funded the money to pay for that transaction. The merchant also has what's called a merchant acquiring bank. They also are entitled to that information. And then there's Visa, MasterCard, or Discover, or American Express, somewhere in the middle. So how do you, that's a scenario of multi-party ownership. There's a term called for and about. The doctor is recording information for me, but it's about me. The doctor is entitled to that information because the doctor uses that information to renew his or her medical malpractice insurance or to further studies on certain conditions. But it's also my information, it's my personal information. So when we have sensors now in this building and we're all being tracked and we've got facial recognition, there's a camera right up there watching us, right? Does it know that Ron Rock's standing in the room right now? And if so, do I have any say in that? Is this building allowed to use that data without my permission and count me, whether it be targeting, segmenting, my demographic, whatever it may be? So as we keep going down this, who owns all that data? The answer is it's all multi-party. Everybody has some permission, some right to that data. These are going to be really hard questions to answer. By the way, on Visa, MasterCard, they've been debating it for 30 years. About every 6 months, the rules change. So I think that's an interesting proxy because as the rules change, the whole ecosystem needs to adapt. And so as we look at IoT and we think about some of the challenges that we want to talk about today, we need to build these systems to be flexible. Because the one thing I know for sure is there is no answer and that the answer is going to keep changing. Another question that comes up is, well, wait a minute, are people really going to share their data? This is proprietary, it's confidential, it's mine. Well, again, I'll go back to the credit card industry and credit scores. I'm Citibank, and I share Ron Rock's information. I say, Ron's got a $10,000 balance, and this is his payment history. And I know, as Citibank, that the minute I share that, Capital One or HSBC is going to swoop in and try to offer me a better deal to take me away from Citibank and to them. So why do I take that risk? I take that risk because the collective industry is better if we all share this data in the equivalent of a data mart idea. So the whole industry is better because we share this data. So think about data now in healthcare. I talked to a company recently where in the next 5 years, I should be able to wear a shirt, have these wearables, tracking my heart rate, tracking everything about me. And I actually not only give them my data, I pay them. And all of a sudden, I could be standing here in front of you guys and I get a little push notification on my watch that says, hey, Ron, you better get to the emergency room. We know you're about to have a heart attack in the next 24 hours. Why do we know that? Because we've been tracking 400,000 people just like you around the planet. And every time one of them had a heart attack, their data looks just like yours did 2 days before. That's pretty interesting. So this idea that data won't be shared, I think is something that people are wrestling with right now. I think it's a slam dunk. I know it's going to be solved. And why do I know it? Let's go back to, again, history. The internet. The internet was around for about 7 years, and nobody used it except scientists. It was an interesting academic communications backbone. And then in 1993-94, HTML was invented, and the World Wide Web was born. And suddenly, I could bring all of this data together. So today, I'm sitting on an Amazon website. Let's say I'm shopping for a new Samsung smart television. I see how many Amazon has in stock and their price. On the same website, I see how much their competitors have and what the price is. Oh, by the way, I can pay for it from any payment utility in the world: Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, PayPal, ACH, Swift, whatever it may be. I can ship it from DHL, UPS, or FedEx. I can insure it through major insurance companies. Wait a minute. All of these guys are competitors. I don't know as a consumer or care. Some of that data is locked behind a firewall and a mainframe. Some of it's out in the cloud. Some of it's in a SAP or CRM system. We're isolated from all that complexity, and we simply bring all of this competitive data together to create an experience. And we see the exact same thing is going to happen with IoT. And so today we're in a world still where we've got smart lighting, smart heating, smart door locks, smart security systems, Tesla out in the driveway, all of these disparate things, and none of them are talking to one another. And so if I have a true smart home, am I really going to have 50 apps on my phone? So I'm getting ready to leave. Let me use the app to make sure the dog and cat is in the house. Let me make sure that the windows are locked. Let me make sure that the heat's turned down. Let me make sure the coffee pot's unplugged. No, I'm just going to simply say, I'm leaving. And all of those systems need to talk to each other. Again, remembering they need to talk to each other securely. They need to be able to talk to each other in a compliant way if they're regulated industries. Need to be secure if it's mashing my healthcare information with others. So we believe that IoT is going to follow the same track as the internet. It's just going to take longer. So if I were to try to pinpoint it right now, we're in 1992 internet. We kind of see this thing. People are starting to understand. They've heard the word IoT. They're not quite sure what it means. But as these chip manufacturers come online, as these sensors become ubiquitous and available everywhere, the floodgates will open, and we're all going to suddenly find ourselves surrounded by even more of a digital exhaust than we present today. And that's where I think the challenges come into play. So once I can share data, then gloves are off. Everybody's going to be running at this thing a million miles an hour. It's going to be my personal information. It's going to be regulated information, financial, insurance, government, manufacturing, proprietary IP, and suddenly we're going to see safer homes. I mean, that's another interesting thing. I spend about 10 days a month in Europe, and most of it I use London as my home base. 1 week in September, there were 3 articles in the Financial Times, front page of the B section. One of them involved Dyson, actually, the woman that got her hair caught in the machine. All these articles did was try to scare the hell out of everybody about Big Brother watching you. It's IoT is bad. IoT is bad. So you run into total strangers like, oh, I don't want that. We can't have that. They don't realize how much data already is being captured by us. But they also don't realize the quality of life, the longevity of life, the convenience, all the benefits that are going to come from this kind of mashup. So we're going to see all this stuff come together. And of course, all this data coming together ultimately is with the autonomous driving car. And it's just going to produce a lot of data. And the opportunity for folks in this room, it's going to be a lot of consulting, a lot of technology, a lot of services, a lot of infrastructure to keep this whole thing going. So just like the internet circa 1992, I think IoT in 2018, we're in exactly the right place at the right time for this exploding industry. So that's all I have to say about that. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ron. Very interesting. I'd love to be able to stand up here and put a slide up. I happen to sadly be a Norwich City fan, so I don't have any slides about winning anything ever. So that's great. And you just reminded me of something actually this morning as I was leaving the house, and it ties into both your points earlier on about the younger generation. I've got a few young children, one of which actually I read an article about recently, which was nappies. So smart nappies that now cost 2p, supposedly more per nappy, to put a sensor in to tell you when you need to change it, which I can do without. I've got another way of finding out when I need to do that. But I was leaving this morning and my 4-year-old daughter asked what I was doing, and I said I was going to a conference about the Internet of Things. And she then said, well, what does that mean? And I didn't answer, but luckily, as I was going out the door, I heard my 6-year-old son answer her, which is either, take your point about the Financial Times, it's either scaremongering about IoT, but also the world we're going to grow up in. His deadpan answer was, next year, so he's quite optimistic. When we wake up in the morning, our bed will weigh us, and if we're too fat, it will lock the biscuit tin. That was his analogy for the Internet of Things. So, anyway.